All right, Chair, it is 4:06 and you're live.
Let's call the meeting to order at 4:06. Great. Minutes, I found not even a typo. So I move that we adopt them, approve them. Second,
I'll second. I'll second.
great. Personnel transactions. You know, I honestly forgot to look at them. So I'm looking to Liz and Russ. I'm looking at them now.
Oh, here they are.
All right.
And those are current through the 14th, so you won't see our 7 new police officers that took office on Monday, but you'll get to see their names next month.
Good.
Well, they look good to me. Do we need a motion to accept?
Please.
I'll make a motion to accept.
All right, thanks, Russ. I'll second. And I think that passes. Correspondence.
Okay. We had several items of correspondence. The first was from State Department of Civil Service. It's a policy advisory review, 0421 pertaining to examination fees. What the gist of this is that effective in April of this year, if you are a local agency and you order an exam through the state, which means that they put you on the calendar, they prepare the exam materials, they ship you the books. If you don't cancel the exam within 31 days prior to the holding, then they're going to charge you for the materials that they prepared anyway. So what I can garner from this is that apparently some agencies, I'm happy to report not us, must be ordering exams, entering counts, and then canceling them for whatever reason, and then never really formally canceling the exam with the state, which results in unnecessary time and expense for the state civil service. The only time that this happened with us was last year during the pandemic, when they had shipped us exam materials for one exam that we didn't end up using because we didn't end up needing the test. But that's the gist. So if you don't cancel within an appropriate time frame and give them notice and you've ordered materials, they're going to charge you for them anyway. So that's the gist. The next piece of correspondence was I was very happy to get an approval of a transfer request that I had recommended. So we hired a gentleman who was a GIS, Geographic Information Specialist, Geographic Information System Specialist from Schoharie County. He had been permanently competitively appointed there, and he transferred that competitive service to the city of Oneonta in our title of Engineering GIS Technician. So we put that request in, and I was very pleased that they had approved it, which just means that this individual it can be appointed without being subject to any further exam. So I was pleased with that result. Continue on with the good news. I also had made a request to appoint an individual on a non-competitive promotion basis. So that's NCP. We had an individual who was appointed provisionally to a deputy code enforcement officer position last year in 2020. This individual had already passed an exam for a code enforcement officer test. So we were able to promote him as an NCP based on him passing that test. So they reviewed that request and approved that it was appropriate. So I was very pleased with that result as well. The next was also from the State Civil Service Department regarding the police supervisors, investigators exam scope. So as you know, we're giving the police sergeant exam in June, Dave, end of June, I think. June 25th? You're muted. I suppose I could just look on my exam list, but.
Yeah, police sergeants is June 5th.
June 5th. Okay. So apparently they made an error in the exam scope, which is the information that they send us to prepare the exam announcement. They indicated that there would be questions that would test for knowledge of the laws in effect on January 1, 2020. Obviously, that should have been up to date to be January 1, 2021. So they corrected that scope, but fortunately they caught it quick and our exam announcement had not yet gone out. So that was done. The next was annual report submission confirmation notice. So you will recall that I bragged to you all that I got our annual report in on time in the middle of February. It was due March 1st. However, I got a call from the state civil service saying, well, you made a mistake, you have to fix it and resubmit it. So I made the same mistake that I made last year, and I'm putting it on my calendar to fix it for next year. Civil service law requires that commissioners' terms expire on March 31st of alternating even years. I expired your terms on May 30th of even years. So I had to change all of your terms from May 30th to May 31st. So I did make that mistake. It was the same mistake I made last year. I have no excuse for myself, and I'm going to make a note and do better next year. But they did take a look through and they said that with the exception of that one error, everything else looked really good, and I haven't heard anything from them since. So on March 8th, we got a resubmission confirmation.
Great.
With my apologies, Commissioner. The next was an informational memorandum 0221. Effective active duty military on special military list status and promotion eligibility. So the purpose of this from my read was to just raise awareness to existing benefits that apply in certain circumstances relating to active duty military. So without really getting into it, because we don't have any practical consideration to apply this to at the moment, it wasn't a change to policy, just trying to advise local agencies that veterans have certain or active duty military has certain benefits pertaining to the examination process and the appointment process, just calling our attention to it. The next was something that didn't really apply to us, but if you have they sent a note saying if you have a probation officer, they were billing it as a uniformed exam, and it should be a non-uniformed exam. So typically, uniformed exams are police and fire. For whatever reason this year they had a glitch in their system and decided to erroneously include it in the uniformed exam, but didn't apply to us because we don't give that test. But I'll bet that Otsego County was very happy with that determination. The next one was our approved 2020 municipal examination fee reporting. So as you know, whenever somebody applies to take a civil service test, they have to file an application fee. And the amount of the fee is a local commission determination. It is established by you. And so our fees are, we pay $750 Dave for decentralized? Okay, so $750 for a decentralized exam, $15 for just a regular non-uniformed exam, and then $25 for uniform, so firefighters, police officers. The justification behind the higher exam fee, of course, is because the background and the psychological and the medical screenings for uniformed officers are typically much higher, so we can justify a little bit of a higher fee. So that said, we do, as part of our annual reporting process with the State Civil Service Department, we do a reconciliation of all of the fees that we received and what we owe the state based on what we took in. So we owed them $415 for 2020, which was of course significantly down from other years. Typically we owe them between $1,500 and $2,000. So again, that money is that is part of the money that we take in from our exams. So just to give you an idea. So non-uniformed exams, we charge $15 of, so of that $7.50 goes back to the state per person. For uniformed fees or uniformed exam fees, we charge $25 and we have to remit $12.50 per applicant to the state. And then for the decentralized exam, it's $750 and we have to send $5 back to the state. So that's how they arrive at those numbers. And then finally, there was, I can't figure out from my read of this why we're being informed of it now, but apparently in 2019, Governor Cuomo instituted the New York State Restoration of Honor Act. And what that means is that it restores access to New York State veterans benefits for veterans who received a general under honorable conditions or an other than honorable conditions discharge from the military due to sexual orientation, gender identity, service-related post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, or a mental health condition linked to military sexual trauma. So for the most part, in order to qualify for veterans benefits, you need to have an honorable discharge. So Governor Cuomo has enacted this law, which says that you can have an other than honorable discharge for if the justification for that discharge was for any of the reasons I just listed. So the state civil service indicated that this was the most inclusive law of its kind anywhere in the country. So we will be sure that we are following along when we have anybody who applies, for veterans benefits and indicate that they have a discharge other than honorable. That concludes my correspondence, Chair Bot.
Oh, great. You've got eligible lists. Did you send those?
I didn't send it because I didn't have it done yet, but I have it ready now.
Okay, so
And
we
just to,
share a screen.
I'm going to share my screen. Yes, sir. I will say though that I made an error on the agenda. The actual exam is 2021-1, not 2021-2 as I indicated. So I'm just going to continue to apologize for everything tonight.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I'm going to start to share my screen. Can everybody see? Well, this is all, that's something else. There we go. So this was an exam that we gave over the weekend. It's a decentralized exam, meaning that we grade it here, which is why we're able to get these scores back so quickly. So we held it over the weekend. We did have 2 people who had to have an alternate test date. They took it on Monday. So Nancy Allison, our personnel clerk, graded the exams. I double checked them. I agreed with all of her findings. So this is our list here. You'll notice that there's a raw score. That just means that was the raw score plus their seniority credits, because this was a promotional exam, which translates into a band score based on what the state prescribed for us. So I also put a note here, as you will see, that candidates are ranked in order of ascending social security number, which is generally how we handle people to have tiebreakers. You know that each person has to be has to have an established unique standing. So like we've got these 3 people, they're all technically tied, but they're for a variety of purposes, they need to be ranked uniquely.
Okay.
So any questions?
Well, looks like good scores.
Yeah. They're very, we have some very smart custodial workers in the school district.
And the water's not even hot.
All right, I'll move to adopt.
A second. I know. I'll go to the store tomorrow.
So that moves. There you go.
Thank you all. Okay, we may as well just move on to our exam status while I'm sharing my screen. So no huge updates again, where you see a 0-0, that's an exam that we've canceled. This was a duplicate request here. This is being held for the library, so there's no scheduled date yet. This was the exam that Dave administered earlier in the month. Administrative specialists, they've still got that 2030 date out there. So maybe they're going to make our provisionals be provisional for the next 9 years. I'm not really too sure, but hopefully we'll see an update there soon. Police sergeant, as Dave mentioned, is on June 5th. We've got that advertised. We have one applicant, I think, so far, Dave, right?
I'm not, yes, we do have one that's come through. Yep.
Firefighter is scheduled for May 1st. The closing date on that we originally established is rapidly closing. And we're going to we'll talk about that in a bit, but the recruitment on that has been abysmal. I mean, we have 4 candidates right now signed up. So that's incredibly disappointing. Civilian dispatcher, that was held in January. We are anxiously awaiting the results because we have a couple of provisional workers. This was the exam that was canceled when the state approved my request for the transfer of the gentleman from Schoharie County. Water and sewer supervisor, you can see that Dave ordered those back in February. We've now celebrated our first birthday with each of those. I'm assuming they just probably don't have an exam prepared or they're attempting to create one. Purchasing agent, this is one that was supposed to be held in April. We did not cancel it, but the state elected not to hold it because we were in the midst of the early stages of the pandemic there. So we do have a provisionally hired purchasing agent, and we will be giving this exam as soon as the state decides to hold it. And then accountant, that one was again requested over a year ago. And I would imagine, I guess that Dave and I'll make a decision when the time comes, but I'd imagine that we would be holding that exam. So that's the extent. Oh no, apparently we've got more. Junior accountant, same as accountant, no date assigned yet. Senior library clerk, that was canceled at the request of the library. Records management clerk. We're gonna be on our second birthday with this one pretty quick. I mean, and I can understand it's a very niche job in the police department, so I can see that they probably just don't have an exam classified. Records management clerk. So this is the promotional exam. This is the open competitive exam. And then transit director, which was in 2019. And then that's the end of our list. Oh, they give an appeal to register to vote. So perhaps everyone should consider that. That's all I've got. Any questions on exams?
Well, I have a question on the document because you did send that to us.
I did.
And it looks like I can sign in and sign out on my version.
Did you click sign in?
Well, I did just for fun.
And
Well, it's telling me I'll have to leave mail in order to access that. But I'm just wondering if we should be getting a active document.
so I think that, so Dave and I are each assigned administrative login permissions from the state commission, the State Department of Civil Service. So that way we can log in and order exams and stuff like that. I don't know if typically commissioners have those types of accounts, but if it's something that you were interested in, we can.
No. I'm presuming if I were to go further, I need a password to actually manipulate the document. But.
Okay. Well, please just don't touch anything. Don't touch anything. Don't mess anything up.
You may not know who you're talking to.
So you're making your own justification as to why we should certainly not be requesting a login ID for you through the state.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, moving on to old business, fire chief.
So I just thought you might all appreciate an update as to where we are. I know that at the last commission meeting, I had reported that we were evaluating options and we had put in a temporary leadership command structure comprised of acting chief Mancini and acting part-time assistant chief Shane Mattice. We were very, very grateful that these 2 veterans came out of a very comfortable retirement to effectively earn half pay to lead the department during a time of significant and unprecedented transition. So that said, we know that we can't keep them forever. We have them for 6 months. And Mike and Shane and I met and we talked at length and we agreed that the right thing to do would be to move forward with the official civil service process, which is evaluating candidates who are on the established eligible list, which is only the appropriate and necessary next step. So to that end, we have sent out canvas letters to all of the candidates on the list. All 7 candidates have responded, indicating that they're interested in the appointment. So Mike and I will, we're convening an interview panel for around probably sometime the 1st or 2nd week of April. And we will be conducting those interviews and hopefully being able to make a recommendation to the council for a permanent successor thereafter. This would allow us to respect the civil service process, which we are legally obligated to do, which was our intention all along anyway. I just wasn't sure when we were going to, kind of get started. And also it would mean that whomever is selected would have the opportunity and ability to work with the acting chief and acting assistant chief for a period of, a couple months to have a little bit of overlap and continuity in leadership before Mike and Shane ride off into the sunset. So that's our plan. I don't know if Mike is listening or.
Oh, there he
There
is.
you are. He likes to be incognito.
Listening.
So anything to add there, acting chief?
No, other than, I think we're going to have a decent panel for this interview process, and that will certainly help us along. And we have some great candidates, and it will ensure the continuation of the command structure and keep moving forward with that so we can avoid any type of outside interim command coming in after Shane and I are done.
So the panel, just in case you're curious, would consist of, of course, Dave and I will be involved, the acting chief and acting assistant chief, other department personnel, and then some key department heads that would be, working with this department. So it's a pretty large panel, but I guess that we need a fire chief who thrives on chaos and can deal with a lot going on all at once. So I'm not too worried about having a large interview panel. This is a really important key public safety position. It's an important part of the city's, senior management team. So we'll be hopefully maybe even by next month being able to give you an update that the panel has made a recommendation to council. So to be continued.
Good. Thank you.
Sure.
And now the new business of firefighter job specifications.
Yes. So, we're going to talk about a few different things here. And I'm very thankful that the acting chief was able to, to come and join the meeting today. I very much relied on his expertise and his subject matter knowledge in order to arrive at, what we hope will be good proposals on some updates that we feel are needed to both the firefighter job description and exam process and the fire captain job description and promotional qualifications. So as far as firefighter goes, I had emailed all of this to you with the promise that we would have a public discussion about it. And that is a couple of things. First, the question of physical agility requirements as part of the examination process. So in the past, we had physical agility requirements as a pre-employment condition that were identical to police officers. So it means that it's the push-ups, sit-ups, and run that are, I think that Dave was just using his daughter's sippy cup. So I'm sorry, that just distracted me for a minute there. I really apologize. So push-ups, sit-ups, and run, which are based on the standards as established by the Municipal Police Training Council. Because of the nature of the job of a firefighter, it was important to have those requirements. We found over time that we were having about an 85 to 90% failure rate of firefighter candidates on that physical agility test. So when we gave the last exam, we all kind of agreed that the right thing to do would maybe be to try something different for one exam cycle to kind of see how it went. The fire chief at the time had advocated for having a modified CPAT, which is an OFPC standard candidate physical ability test, which is very job specific physical agility exercises like wearing gear and pulling hoses and pushing things and climbing stairs. I mean, all sorts of very fire specific stuff that is really designed to gauge a candidate's physical ability for fire specific tasks and duties. At the time, we had all agreed that we were in no position to be administering a test like that ourselves because of liability, lack of equipment. We couldn't guarantee without the proper equipment, proper training, proper everything, that the exam could be administered in a uniform basis. So that was kind of a non-starter for us here. I mean, we were very concerned because, of course, in civil service, the entire point, reason for our existence is to level the playing field so that everybody's being administered an appropriate and identical exam in all ways, either a written exam or a physical exam, so that we're not unintentionally discriminating against candidates. We want to give everybody an equal opportunity. So that said, after talking with the chief and kind of seeing, and so to go back, so the last exam that we administered, we had no physical agility requirements of any kind. We sent people for a pre-employment, like a really thorough pre-employment physical. We had them, certified before we sent them off to the academy that they were, appropriately in a physical condition commensurate with the requirements of the and the rigors of the academy. And it worked for all intents and purposes. We didn't have any significant problems. We didn't, all of our people thus far have been able to, get through the academy appropriately. Then we had, something really horrible, quite frankly, that happened at the State Fire Academy, which some of you may have read about in the news, which was there was a candidate who, not related to Oneonta. He was a friend of some of our recruits, and Mike can certainly provide more information. But there was a candidate who went to the academy and was participating in a pretty rigorous physical exercise, like a training module. And the person ended up collapsing and dying. And it was really, really traumatic. It was really upsetting, of course, to our folks who were friendly with this person. But it really brought to light, to me personally, the need that we need to do everything that we possibly can to be sure that our candidates are in the best physical shape possible for their own safety before we send them off to an academy. So it was with that in mind that Mike and I agreed that the appropriate thing to do, and there were other reasons too, and Mike can get into that, but Mike and I agreed that the right thing to do would be to reinstate the old physical agility requirements, the push-ups, the sit-ups, and the run, just to be sure that we were really appropriately gauging a person's level of physical fitness prior to sending them off to the academy. So with that said, Mike, what do you have to add to that?
No, I completely agree. You pretty much said everything that needed to be said. The biggest thing regarding that is the academy isn't in a place where the guys go, or any of the firefighters go to become physically fit. They should have a certain minimal standard of fitness before they even get there. They are trained while they're there in routine physical fitness during their morning routine, and then in the evenings they're given what's called task-oriented physical training, and that's the task training that's given to them so they can complete the CPAT exam at the end of their several weeks of the academy training. So once they get through the academy, then they take the state required CPAT exam. So having someone who's fit start the academy is only going to be an advantage to them and to us. And then they can continue that physical training during their morning routines, and then get all the training that they need to complete the CPAT exam at the end. So, and I completely agreed with Katie about the logistics and the issues that we would face if we had a modified CPAT here. We discussed that option, and it's just the logistics of it would be way too much and running the risk and liability of any type of irregular practice or anything like that. So why not just wash our hands of it, do the basic stuff that's straight across the board, and then send our recruits off to the academy for the remainder of it.
So I think that there's a very clear and nexus between the requirements of the position, the physical requirements, and the tests that we're proposing and will be administering. Firefighters are also EMTs, which means that they are carrying potentially large patients down 3 flights of stairs in difficult situations. I mean, it's really important that people are, not to mention, all of the obvious firefighting and, other hazard response type activities that they're doing. So, I think that Mike and I are in definite agreement that we really need to be appropriately gauging physical agility before they even, go to the academy. Are there any questions or concerns on that?
No, other than I thought we had already agreed to move ahead with this.
You agreed to move ahead with it. I'm sorry, Russ, were you going to say something?
No, I know you sent out an email to everybody, but I think you said we were going to discuss it too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did. I sent out the email because I realized that we were kind of in a time crunch to get the exam announced. So informally, we had all kind of agreed via email that it was the right thing to do to get, to advertise the physical agility requirements, but that again, I wanted to explain the justification publicly, just for transparency purposes, so that anybody listening, and that our records would reflect formally why we were making this decision. So.
Who administers the basic physical fitness? Is that done in-house?
It is. It will be done by one of the fire department's qualified trainers under the supervision of Dave or I. Just for, commission purposes. We will not interfere with technicalities, but we're just there to be sure that the test is administered, fairly and appropriately. So we've got some pretty, excellent people in the department who are very interested and capable of administering the test, for which we're very grateful. And we always have, I'm sorry.
We have members in both sides that could administer the exam. So if we needed more people, they're available.
Yeah, I was going to say that we also have, people on the police side who administer these tests multiple times every single year, just because of the nature of police recruitment, who I'm sure would be more than happy.
Good. All right. Do we need a motion to that effect, or?
I don't think there needs to be a motion because we're not really, a motion will come when we look at the next project. So the next thing that so Mike and I agreed that we wanted to kind of memorialize some of these requirements in the job description. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and you can take a look at what Mike and I have put together for you. Everybody see?
Yes.
Okay. So this is our firefighter job description as it stands. Anything that is highlighted in yellow or crossed out are places that I am proposing revisions. You'll notice that this is an anticipated revision date down here. So all this stuff is stuff that I've added, and all this stuff is stuff that I've changed. We didn't alter anything up here with general statement of duties, examples of work, anything like that. That was Mike and I found that to be pretty sufficient. Where we started having problems was under the minimum qualifications. It indicated that you can have graduation from a standard high school or GED or 2 years of work or military experience or any equivalent combination. Now, if you look, the last time that this was modified, it was in 2016, but before that it was in 2008, which predates the requirement that all of our firefighters become paramedics. In order to attend a paramedic program, you are required to have a high school diploma. So we should no longer accept a firefighter candidate who does not possess a high school or equivalency diploma. So Mike and I are just looking, rather than having A, B, and C, which provides for these antiquated requirements, we're looking for the minimum qualification just to be, you have to have that high school diploma or equivalency. That's the first change. The next change is that I don't believe that we indicated that there is a minimum age for firefighters, so it's really kind of important that we include that. We also made no special requirement that people have a driver's license, which is of course kind of important if you're being required to drive ambulances and fire trucks and other sorts of vehicles. So we'd like to say that you need to have a New York State driver's license and you have to keep it for the duration of your employment. We indicated these are the post-offer pre-employment requirements, kind of what we've talked about. So you need to pass a physical fitness screening, a physical agility test, a medical screening, including a drug screening, and background, including a psychological evaluation. So that's just to set the expectation from, and again, this information would be included in the job or in the exam announcement, just to set the expectation that this is what's expected of you if you want to be employed with the city in this capacity. The next thing we put in here is just the expectation that you're required to become a paramedic. That's been in the contract since 2012. I don't know why I never thought to put it in here, but it really, we should be setting the expectation that people must become a paramedic. Number 5, this just means that candidates, if you're hired, you are expected to complete the basic training program at the State Fire Academy for firefighters, which includes that CPAT, that candidate physical ability test, which is the real fire-based drag a dummy, drag a hose, run upstairs, things like that. That is administered by the State Fire Academy with qualified trainers, appropriate equipment through a vetted, established process. So that's kind of where we're saying we're not really equipped to administer that test here, but that doesn't mean that once you're hired, you can't do it at the academy, because you have to. And that's a state requirement. That's not an us requirement. We're also including that preference in hiring may be given to candidates who have some form of EMT licensure. So we're not saying this is a minimum requirement, just saying that preference may be given. So those are the revisions we're proposing.
Katie, can I jump in for 1 sec?
I would love nothing better.
We probably need to get rid of licensure and make it certification.
For the
Yeah,
paramedic.
Four.
yeah, both.
Where? What number?
4.
4 and 6.
10. Certification. Yeah,
Yep.
good.
Good.
Any questions or concerns about these?
New York State driver's license, is that just a standard passenger vehicle license, or do they need more advanced CDL type licenses to drive trucks?
That's a great question, Keith. And we are, believe it or not required by the state of New York to have a CDL to operate and drive our fire apparatus.
Okay. I think I knew that, but having driven a fire truck with a split rear many, many decades ago, it was embarrassing that I was allowed to do that. But anyway. All right, so that stays as just a standard license. Good.
So if there are no other questions, we would need a motion and a second in order to adopt the modifications to the job description as presented.
I make a motion, we accept the modifications to the job description.
I
Firefighter.
second it.
All right, and I agree. So that's unanimously approved.
Thank you both. So the next one we're going to look at is fire captain, and this looks a lot more complicated than it really is. So fire captain is an exam that we're getting ready to hold at the end of June. So Mike and I wanted, so you're not getting a panicked email at the last minute. We wanted to take a look and give it a good scrub and be sure it was updated and ready to go, so that way, when it comes time to announce the promotional exam, we would be good to go. So just, the one change I made here, checks, we're making, of course, this was, wildly inappropriate. So we're making this gender neutral, ensure that the men are properly assigned. We just want to say subordinate employees, very brief change. Michael included a couple bullets here that, we didn't really find a lot about the real serious, writing and technological requirements that are really a large part of the position. And again, I think that's probably because this just hasn't been updated in so long. Our job spec hasn't kept pace with technology. So they are, these, fire captains are really responsible for NIFRs. Those are National Fire Incident Reporting System. Is that the right acronym, Mike? Yeah, no?
Correct.
Okay. And then PCR, those are patient care reports. So on like the EMS side, every time an ambulance call goes out, the captains are the ones who are responsible primarily, or crew leaders in their place, for being sure that all of those reports are really filled out. And these are, subject to, state review, federal review. So it's really, really important that they're done appropriately and correctly, which is why, and the reports involve not just checking boxes, but you have to write narratives and all sorts of other information. So before, Mike and I are actually looking to increase the minimum qualifications for this job, and I will tell you why. Again, this is where the job specification on the civil service end has just not kept pace with the collective bargaining agreement and, the actual operations of the department. So previously, the minimum qualification were just that you needed to have a high school diploma and you needed 5 years as a paid firefighter. So when Mike and I started looking at that, we hire folks as firefighters who are in school for the better part of 5 years in order to gain all of the licenses that we require. So if you think about it, when somebody comes in and they don't have any sort of background in fire or EMS, we're sending them to the fire academy. We're sending them for a paramedic certification program. And that can take, generally from start to finish, 4.5 years. So the thought that we would be allowing someone who had barely finished their training 6 months later to be qualified to become a captain just didn't really sit right with us. And again, I think it's it doesn't mean that we don't have faith in our 5-year employees, because we certainly do, but we just felt that given the enhanced training and certification requirements, increasing the number of years experience that on the job that you really need to practically function as a captain, what was appropriate. So we're suggesting that we increase it by 3 years to 8 years. So for the minimum qualifications, which is open competitive, so that's people coming in from the outside, completion of high school or equivalency, and 8 years of permanent service as a paid firefighter. Which kind of keeps us in line with, if you look at our titles as a line of promotion. So in order to become like a fire chief, you need now 10 years of experience per OFPC, unless you have, some other level of national certification. So typically we don't include promotional qualifications in job class specs. However, because we're requesting an update to them, I just wanted to draw your attention to it. So similar to what we've done with the open competitive minimum qualifications, we do think that candidates really need to have 8 years as a firefighter with us before they could be considered to be promoted. And it's of course important that we keep promotional and open competitive qualifications somewhat in line with one another. So we figured 8 or 8 was the right thing to do. Anything to add there, Mike?
If they're coming from another department, they still have to be here for 8 years.
Nope. So you either qualify, it depends on how we hold the exam, Keith. So if we were to give the exam on an open competitive basis, like for whatever reason, if we had nobody in the department who was interested in taking this test, and we knew that we had to give the test on an open competitive basis, meaning it's open to all outside qualified individuals, that would mean that 8 years of experience and a high school diploma, 8 years of experience in any fire department anywhere, as long as you are a paid full-time firefighter, would qualify you to take our test. If you're taking the test on a promotional basis, then you have to be employed with the City of Oneonta Fire Department for 8 years. Now, the reason why our promotional qualifications are going to be really important are because I can guarantee that we're going to have more than 3 individuals in the department who will be interested in taking a promotion. So we know that we will have a mandatory list resulting from a promotional exam. Mike, I'm sorry, did you have anything to add?
No, I was just listening.
Okay. So moving on to special requirements, again, this is kind of attempting to capture what we're already doing. So you need to have a driver's license. This is the bullet that Mike and I were talking about before we started the meeting, because we were kind of going back and forth. Do we say paramedic, critical care? What do we do? We're just saying the appropriate level of EMS certification, which just, I mean, so effectively, we're just leaving space here for us to follow the bargaining unit contract, because it's the bargaining unit contract that indicates, you know, what type of license you have to have, and it's based on your hire date. But we'd like to leave room to include this requirement. So the next is kind of a new sort of radical thing. And this is why Mike is dangerous with his joint background as an HR director, as well as, you know, fire and emergency services. So I'd like for him to kind of explain this, but effectively what he's looking for, and he made the justification to me, and I completely agreed with him, that our fire captains really have a lot of responsibility. And the leadership program that they get through the FLIPS school, which Mike can talk to you about, while it's very important and useful and required by New York State, does not necessarily adequately prepare a candidate for all of the responsibilities that are required as a captain. So Mike, do you want to talk about 3 and what your justification is here?
Sure. My recent experience in flip school, most of the requirements that you have during that training when you become an officer, which, as Katie said, was a state requirement, there were only actually a couple days of leadership that were in that. Most of the instruction had to do with some tactical instruction, becoming an instructor, and also becoming a fire officer training. And over the years of just my firefighter experience and my crew leader experience, and now prior to this becoming captain, I really feel that there's things that need to be kind of rolled into this level of officer, and public speaking, computers, standard writing practices, and peer leadership. Kind of a few things that came to mind. I've been talking to some other firefighters over the last couple of years, and these are things that we had talked about that we felt would be important for this position. As far as public speaking goes, one of the first indications that comes about public speaking is that a captain, an on-duty captain, may in fact be the public information officer for the city at any given incident, at any given time, until a further higher level of command has come in and taken over the incident. So you want someone who's, you know, fluid, that can speak to the public and present the situation at hand in a way that maybe they're not giving away any information that shouldn't be given away because of legal requirements or anything along those lines. As far as computers go, we talked about that a little bit earlier. We're rolling into a fire service that I would have never expected 25 years ago, where everything is a lot of online training, the report writing, our software programs for our patient care reports, for our regular NIFR reports. And we're in the process now of implementing a new training program for EMS that's going to be completely online, 100% for all the membership. So there's a lot of computer stuff involved. There's always new softwares. We just recently, 2 years ago, experienced a new software change. So you have to have a little bit of a handle on rolling around on a keyboard and a computer to make things work. And it's going to be a time saver in the long run when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're backed up on 3 or 4 calls filling out reports. Standard writing practices comes into that play, as Katie alluded to, as far as doing narrative portions of your reports. In addition to that, narratives across your incident reports, accident reports. All of these things are foilable, and some of these things may be subject to subpoena, either in a civil case or in a criminal case. So you certainly want to have all your ducks in a row, all your I's dotted, all your T's crossed, to make sure that it's everything that you're going to be able to defend. And I tell the guys that are fire investigators that work with me, whatever you write, whatever you put in there, you better be able to defend it when you get on the stand and you raise that right hand and you're being cross-examined. And the last one on here is the peer leadership. As I said a few minutes ago, the leadership that you get at Flip School is a few days. It's great training. Unfortunately, it was only a couple days. I certainly, for the information that they had given us in my class a couple years ago, easily could have been a 1-week class. So I think at this level of fire officer in this organization, even as that, given the fact that we're not a huge organization, I think it's extremely important that they have a little bit more of some type of leadership training, not just the fire officer training that's required. Any questions?
Do you
I
need
should
to,
add- Oh, sorry.
do you need to identify these courses as accredited courses? Who approves the course you're taking?
So I was thinking about that, and Mike and I had originally talked about, having them be like post-secondary education, but we would also, accept, a certification or a training through the State Fire Academy, or, so we didn't necessarily want to hem people in and say it has to be a college class. So I would think that we could say that it would be a curriculum approved by the fire chief. Is that fair?
Definitely fair. And we, having all the online capabilities, having the fire academy classes, the National Fire Academy, in addition to being in a community with 2 colleges, and in our collective bargaining agreement, or in the firefighters collective bargaining agreement, they have tuition reimbursement. So even getting non-matriculating instruction at one of the 2 or any one of the colleges in our area is certainly attainable.
So I'll say, course curriculum, what can I spell, is subject to prior approval by the fire chief. So I think that Mike has done a really good job at laying out exactly why we need these requirements. I think that he's done a good job, indicating that each one of these things can be tied to a direct responsibility of our fire captains. I think it's a little different, on the police side of things, where they go away to an academy for 6 months and they do different little certifications in different areas. I mean, I don't think that they necessarily, while it's a very rigorous and excellent academy at the fire academy, I don't think that they get that type of comprehensive stuff that they really need. So I would appreciate your support on this. I think, as Mike has said, the union contract allows for, tuition reimbursement. So the city will be, reimbursing part of these costs. And it's also part of our, just commitment to continuing education. Fire captains are a really important part of our structure in the department for the reasons Mike has mentioned. And I would appreciate your support on adopting these. And they also have 3 years to do it. So that's one. And also, I don't know if you noticed one of the last bullets where, if a person already has a college degree where they took public speaking classes, we'll accept that. We'll accept that.
Is there a level between firefighter and captain?
Well, that's funny you should ask, Chairbot.
Here we go.
Mike, do you want to take that one?
No, go ahead. You start off, and I'm not sure what you had.
So there is not currently a layer, but Mike and I, as part of our, conversation, arrived at the fact that there really needs to be. I mean, one thing that we've learned, I think, from, the last few months at the fire department is that we're not doing enough to appropriately have succession planning and professional development to create, advancement opportunities for our existing employees. So that said, Mike and I have been talking about, we don't have anything to present to you today, thank goodness. But we'd like to introduce the role of fire lieutenant, which is something that many departments our size have. It would be subject, of course, to negotiation with the first step would be, approval by you, the commission. It would also be subject to negotiation with the fire union and also subject to council approval. So there's all sorts of parts of the process, and Mike and I plan on tackling that at some point during his tenure here.
And the reason I bring it up is that 8 years seems like a long period to go from entry level.
Mhm.
captain.
So that's why we were thinking that perhaps 5 years would be more appropriate for a lieutenant. So
Okay.
you can have 5 years of experience and become a lieutenant, and then 8 for captain, and then 10 for chief, assistant chief.
Katie, can I just give everybody a background a little bit on that so they kind of know where we've
Sure.
been, where we've come, and where we're at now? We have, I don't want to call it a position, but we have essentially a non-competitive title of what's called crew leader. Years ago, when I first started, the crew leader was in charge of the crew in the absence of the captain. So if the captain was off on a contractual absence, such as sick time or vacation time, that individual would run the crew unless there was another captain that had come in on overtime to fill that vacancy. And those individuals were decided usually about every other year when we had a captain's exam results come out. So the top 4 individuals on that exam list were the ones who became crew leader. And they were in that position until the next exam came around. As time went on, we realized that we needed to evolve the position a little bit more and have some educational requirements in there and some training requirements. So collectively with the union, we had negotiated to put a little more requirements in there, a few more requirements in there as far as fire officer training, some incident command training. And as time went on, that stayed in place probably, I'm guessing around 15 years now, or maybe even longer. I'd have to go back and look. But in any event, it's not a ranked position. They are not a crew leader essentially when a captain is here. So today on duty, there is a captain on duty. His crew leader is here, but he is acting just as a firefighter because the captain is in fact on duty. An example where these ranked positions would be a benefit is just as recent as 24 hours ago, when we had a working structure fire, and on our response to the fire, I had one acting captain and 2 crew leaders who essentially are not crew leaders at that point. They just are because I know they are, but they're not acting in the absence of the captain because we're all together. And other than that, I was the only ranked officer on the scene. So having the lieutenant's positions, just those 2 crew leaders actually would have been, I'll use them as an example because of where they are in their standing, would have been ranked officers on the scene with me.
Yeah. I'll look forward to that new position. But as long as we need to approve these recommended additions, and I'll move to do that. Is there?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
I'll second.
And everybody in favor, right, Liz?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So the next one is going to be really quick. The custodian exam. I found through the course of updating this to give the exam that we do some of our outside agencies require that the custodian has a driver's license because they have to drive vehicles, and the housing authority they need to drive. I didn't get a response from the library and the school district. They said, no, it's not really required, but it would be helpful sometimes if they have to drive a van or whatever. So I would just, the only change I'm requesting to this one is in special requirements, just to say that you have to have a valid driver's license and to maintain it. That was it.
That's fine.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Great.
Okay, that's also unanimous.
Mhm.
Are we into the executive session point? Are we ready to go?
Oh, I should probably stop sharing my screen.
Pardon me?
Sorry about that. I was saying I should probably stop sharing my screen. Yeah, so it would be a confidential matter pertaining to the potential disqualification of a police officer candidate. So we would need a motion and a second to go into executive session.
Well, I move at 5:06 PM that we move into executive session to discuss what Katie just so nicely said.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Russ. Carrie? Thank you.
All right, so we,
Commissioner Southard, you should have a button to push to enter executive session. Did it pop up?
Okay, so Chair Bott, I will note that the commission is out of executive session at 5:13 PM. And the motion is, the final motion will be that the commission makes a motion to deny the disqualification appeal made by candidate number 4.
So moved.
Do you have a second? Keith and Liz, you're both muted, so I think that one of you is saying.
I second it.
Yes.
I think you're automatically muted when you come out of that room.
Yeah, it does. Chair Bott, I'm assuming no. No, you're still muted.
Yeah, I'm still muted.
There we go.
No objection from you?
None. Good.
Go ahead.
So at 5:14, are we ready to adjourn?
I'm
I
ready.
am.
I'll move to do so.
Hey, Mike, thanks for stepping up.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, and it was great seeing you guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
We have a second to adjourn.
Yes.
Second.
Second to adjourn.
Wonderful. All right, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you all.
See ya.
Thanks a lot, Katie.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.